Pastor Barry Randolph, we are in one of approximately 4,000 churches in the city of Detroit, and if not the only, one of very few who are actually doing something to address the problems that continue to feel like they're on a loop in the city of Detroit: housing, unemployment, crime, undereducation, and just overall dismayed with who we are and where we are as a city. So thank you for your time. But let me ask you this, because we had a conversation once and you said nobody ever asked you this. How are you doing?
Nobody ever asks us. Thank you, Karen. I am good. I am fine. I'm overwhelmed, tired, not in a bad way, but tired of this loop, tired of talk, tired of people talking about issues and not being able to do something about it. Ready to move and ready to see action, but I don't want to just sit and wait for somebody to come save us. I believe the city of Detroit actually has everything it is that it needs. We got some of the most incredible people in this city. We just need to be activated to do the work that we need to do with no obstacles in the way.
But what's not happening? Because we do. We got over 4,000 churches. We have over 70,000 nonprofit organizations. And yet and still, we're wrangling with the same issues that we have for decades. So if we have the resources, what is it that we don't have, or what is it that we're not doing to actually make a dent in all of these issues?
Well, one of the things I think we need is unity, in the sense of there's also opponents who work just as hard to make sure that there is racism, to make sure that there's more guns than people, to make sure that there is inequity, who work on issues of gentrification, who work on things of takeover, just all of these different things. So for as much as you got people who are working to eradicate the issues, you have another side that's out there that's not trying to eradicate the issues. They want the status quo. So then therefore, the fight continues. But I believe that the people who are doing the work just need to unify more and say that we're going to be a united front and come together, put differences aside. Like in Detroit, we got all of these churches. Imagine if there was no such thing as denomination. Imagine if I don't have to see eye to eye with you, whether you believe in Jesus Christ being the Son of God or not. Imagine if we don't ever have to talk about whether or not a woman is called to preach. Imagine if we can do this thing and don't even talk about that, but work on the work of what the Bible say, how we're supposed to treat our neighbor and how we're supposed to treat ourselves. Imagine if we just did that. We would get so much work done if we weren't distracted.
But isn't there benefit, financial and otherwise, for organizations, churches in some instances, to capitalize on the brokenness of people, on the struggle? And so maybe that's the incentive for them not to fix the problem.
Well, have mercy upon their soul, because if they have any belief in God, then therefore you know that you're going to have to answer to him. And we understand too that we're not supposed to turn our back on poor people, and we're not supposed to sit back and watch injustice take place. So then therefore I would be more afraid of professing a thing and not doing it. That's what I'd be afraid of that.
So let's talk about what makes you different. You don't drive a Maybach.
Nope.
You don't have any jewelry. You're not in a suit.
Nope.
You got on gym shoes. And other than the University of Michigan cap.
I'll have Michigan State.
We're going to get you a Michigan State cap.
Yeah.
But what makes you different? Let's talk about the things that make you who you are, that shape the things that you're doing, because you're addressing housing. You bring in young people as they are.
Yes.
You are, you talked about being at a meeting the other day on homelessness, when they would not let homeless people that you had speak, and you got up and walked out of the meeting.
Yeah.
So who is Pastor Barry Randolph? What makes you who you are?
So let me say this. I never wanted to be a preacher. That was not my thing. I always believed that God existed. Church was not my thing. Being a preacher was not my thing. When I was called to do this, God literally had to call me. I had a burning bush experience. And he told me, go get my young people. And he told me to do church differently, that people didn't reject God. They had a problem with the package that the church put God in. Change that package. People want to know who God is, and to be able to do that. So in doing that, sometimes you have to fight against the status quo, and you have to look at the systems that don't necessarily allow young people in. We always say this. We always get people to say, yes, we want the young people, we want the young people. But if they walk in and they smell like weed, if they walk in and the hat is backwards, if they walk in and the pants are sagging, we immediately would stop them at the door. We would say we would let them in, but would we really? And then if we were nice enough to allow them to come in, how would we look at them when they came in? Would we see a child of God? Would we see a human being? We profess that, but do we believe that? Would we show that? And I think that is the most important thing. I didn't come to play church. I didn't come to play with people's lives. I came to make a difference. And when I die, I want to be able to say I've done the best job I possibly can with making a difference. Now, my thing is, I'm not into the wardrobes. I'm not into the fancy cars. The church don't pay me. This is not a job. This is a call. I am called to make a difference in my community. I am called to make a difference with the people who come here. And the young people, they don't reject God. They just don't like church. And I just don't understand why church just can't change the way that they do things. And seeing that I'm a Christian, if Jesus Christ came to Detroit, they'd be around him. And I guarantee you a whole bunch of preachers would say that couldn't be the Messiah because he with them and not with the preachers.
If God did come to Detroit, what would he say about what we're doing, what we're not doing, how we're treating each other, and how we've presented, packaged, and sustained church, as you will?
Well, one of the things is I think we need to look at, I'm only saying this because I'm Christian, and I respect all denominations. I respect all denominations. But it's always like, who did Jesus always have a problem with? He didn't have a problem with the poor. He didn't have a problem with the disadvantaged. He didn't have a problem with the young people. He always had a problem with the status quo. He had a problem with the systems that kept the people down. He had a problem with the government that wouldn't treat the people right. He had a problem with the religious leaders who put profit before the people. That's who he had a problem with. And I believe that if God came to Detroit today, he would be having the exact same problem. You cannot put profit before people. You cannot put policies and stuff before people. You cannot look at the issue of gun violence and illiteracy and homelessness, domestic violence and all of this. How come we can't solve this? We don't want to solve this.
You talked earlier a little bit about the church, the building itself, and that's not what church is.
The church is the people. The church is not the building. I always say that when Jesus said, I'm coming back for my church, he's not coming back literally for a church of the Messiah and pick up the building. No, he's coming back for the people. It is the people who have the mindset of God. It is people who have a different mindset, who want to make a difference. We make it so much about coming into the building. But what do we do when we're not in the building? The work of the church is not in the building. The work of the church is in the street. And the work is in the people. He's coming back for people who are kingdom-minded, people who are going to stand up to injustice, people who are going to make a difference, people who are going to get out of their comfort zone, people who are not just going to talk about it, but people who go be about it and who are going to go about it. And that's a lot of the people that are at Church of the Messiah. We spend more time outside this building than in it.
And that's what I was going to say. Your service is 1 hour on Sunday, and the rest of the time you are in the street and you're working.
Yes.
Tell me about some of that work you're doing in the streets of Detroit.
Well, some of that work in the street of Detroit, okay, I know everybody heard about the elderly lady who was raped. I had gotten a call from one of the deputy chiefs who called me and said, you know, some activists are getting together on the west side of town. Can you come over? And I got with some of the members of the church. We immediately got together and we went over there. We took food to feed the people of the neighborhood, to feed the activists, but also we pounded the pavement and we got into the street. Talked to the people in that community neighborhood, and I must say the people in that neighborhood were amazing. The people that we talked to on the street were amazing. People wanted to be able to do something, so everybody was on the lookout. And as of this talk that we're having right now, I think that they did apprehend somebody.
Right, they did.
And then hopefully he is off the street. The other thing that we do in the street, you know, we have our Silence the Violence March and Rally. We have a memorial march honoring the innocent victims of gun violence. We had well over 1,000 people come last year. We've been doing it for 15 years. We take that to the street. We stand up for the innocent victims. We work on policy. We work to change the mindset of the community to be able to say that these are individuals and people, and because they no longer have a voice because of gun violence, we're going to be their voice. And we're going to build out the city of Detroit. We have a project that we're going to be doing where we're going to be rehabbing another apartment building. We got another project that's going to be going on East Grand Boulevard right near Jefferson, where where we're going to put together, I believe it's going to be 60 more units of affordable housing to make sure that people actually have real affordable housing in the city of Detroit. We're going to put a business incubation center in that so that the people in the community and neighborhood, and you don't have to be a church member to do anything at Church of the Messiah. You just have to be a member of the community. We're going to do that so that we can help people do their own businesses.
And that's a huge thing, because
Yes.
too often, especially for our young people, we tell them to go to school, get a good job, when in actuality their talents are usurped by society.
Yep.
And they don't capitalize on it. So
Yes.
I certainly applaud that. But let's talk about the building just for a second, because one of your supporters said Pastor Barry takes every dime, every dollar that he gets, and he invests it into the people in the community. And as a result, you've got some things kind of leaking through the roof, and that's put you. So I want to talk about that, because at some point the community needs to rally behind you and make sure that that is addressed, so you can continue to work from and not necessarily out of the building.
Wow, Karen, that was an amazing analogy. Well, yeah, we spend so much time on the community on the outside. We do have to look out for the building. We do have to look out for the inside of this building, because inside of this building, this is where our housing corporation is, our doctor's office, where we provide the internet service, our commercial kitchen, where we do employment and workforce development. So we do use the building. And our roof is leaking. And what a lot of people don't know, they hear things like, oh, you're about to rehab a building down the street, or you have rehabbed over 200 units of affordable housing. How come you can't fix your own roof? What people don't know is Church of the Messiah created Church of the Messiah Housing Corporation to literally be a housing corporation to provide affordable housing for the community and neighborhood. So it's not like you pay your rent and the money comes to the church. No, it goes back into Church of the Messiah Housing Corporation to maintain, manage the building, pay the insurance, pay mortgages if that's necessary, to hire people to do the management. And so then therefore every dime goes back into that. So it's not like it comes into the church. The money that comes to the church is mostly the tithes and offering. And what a lot of people don't know, me and the assistant pastor here, we don't get paid for this. But our church is not a rich congregation. We're rich in spirit, but we're not this big mega church. So a lot of our people who come to church, some of them don't have jobs. These are people we're trying to get employed to get things done. So we don't take up a huge amount of money. But we do need to get our roof fixed. It's in upwards of at least $300,000 in order to be able to do that. We're going to be putting together a fundraiser at the end of this year, working towards that. I just hope we make it through this spring and summer before we get to that. And as we're talking, we're talking about this severe storm coming with 70-mile-an-hour winds and 2-inch hail and flash flooding. And I hope the roof don't fall while we're talking. But I pray to God that don't happen. But yeah, that is something that we have got to do. And we do need the building, even though we spend more time outside the building. We do need this building. And this church, it's 121 years old, so it's an old building.
It's beautiful. It is
Yes.
absolutely, the woodwork, everything in here is beautiful. You live in the city of Detroit.
I live upstairs from here. I live in this building. I left my house. I left my job. I was so committed to this. God literally told me, do you have more faith than fear? Yes. And I'm like, Lord, because I couldn't do my job and do this full time. And this meant so much to me, and he knew that. And I'm like, Lord, this job is in my way. And he said, quit your job, move into the building, and do my work full time. And I said, Lord, if this don't work, I'm going to be unemployed, homeless, and churchless. This is not going to turn out good. He said, do it anyway. Have more faith. The people in this community and in this church saw that. They was like, this fool done moved in the church,
This fool.
quit his job, did this thing. And someone was like, we got to back him up because he's stupid. And it reminds me of a gospel reading that we were doing a couple weeks ago when Jesus was going back to Bethany. He was going back, and he was going back because his friend Lazarus was dead. He was going back to see his family. And then the disciples said, wait a minute, Lord, why are you going back there? Those people just tried to kill you. Why are you going back? If you go back, you go die. And then Thomas looked at the rest of the disciples and said, let's go die with him. Because he's foolish. He's going out there, and so we go die with him. And that's what some people in this community did. If that man is foolish enough to do that, and you got to remember the church was in disrepair then, we had no money, we had no members, and we were scheduled to close in 18 months. And when people stopped and they saw that degree of commitment, I'm like, come hell, high water, I'm going to do this. And it made some people stop and say, if you dumb enough to do this, we're going to do it with you. That's the Detroit I'm talking about. That's the Detroit that's almost like, we're not going to run from these things, we're going to stand anyway. And that is the true Detroit that don't get the credit. Mm-hmm. That's bigger than the Dan Gilberts, that's bigger than the Illages, that's bigger than all of these people coming with these grandstands. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for Grandma Jenkins on the corner doing her thing and that block club, there would be no Detroit for them to celebrate. That's true Detroit. And those are the ones we need to be celebrating, and those are the heroes, and that's why I do what it is that I do. I owe them, and I owe the people who put this church together, who said we go build the houses, we go do this thing, and to the then members of the church, I'm like, what? So we just go lay down and die? We done been through all of this? We done been through the 67 riots, and we done start, oh, hell no, this ain't gonna happen. God didn't. The same spirit that raised him from the dead is on the inside of us. And it's got to be, sometimes you got to be the sacrificial fool, but that's the privilege. Somebody's got to be able to do it. I don't mind doing that. I don't mind doing that part. So at least when I died and what it was I preached, I believed it for real. That's my thing. I believe what it is that I preach. I believe that.
But that's the sincerity that people don't have anymore.
Yes.
It's just not there.
Yes.
It's not, it's all about whatever, but there is no sincerity. It's all about, performative actions and profit.
Yes.
And there's no progress anywhere. And we just keep kicking a can that nobody ever stops to pick up and say, hey, now we don't have to kick this can anymore.
Yes. And that's why God, a lot of times, God is talking to his people. Mm-hmm. He don't talk to everybody, and I keep telling people that. When the Bible says certain things like, if my people, not church people, if my people, people who have the right heart to speak, he only talking to certain people. There's always going to be the opposition and the Goliath and all that other stuff. But he was like, you don't pay attention to the Goliath. You put your eyes on the prize of the mission that I'm calling you to do. You just do your part of what that mission is. And that's what it is we're supposed to do. He's saying, my people.
So for all the people that say they want a better Detroit, for all the people that say they want to do something to help, for all the people that say they really want to do something that's going to make a difference, what can those people, including me, do to help you?
Definitely, they can donate money to us. You can go on our website, and it has the buttons where you can donate, and you can do that. Or you can mail a check or a money order, drop a donation off, 231 East Grand Boulevard, 48207, Church of the Messiah. You can do that. Anything would be greatly appreciated. Most of the time, the church don't actually ask the community for anything back because we feel as though that we are servants. But in this particular case, this is one time the church itself need. And I can honestly and truly say, when you give to Church of the Messiah, it does not come to people. It literally goes to take care of what it is that we need to do. When we take up our tithes and offering on Sunday, that literally keeps the lights on, it pays the insurance, it pays the gas bill, it does those type of things. Our people volunteering, do the landscaping, do the community gardens, all of those type of things. So it's not like we're even paying people. You're not paying for paid people. Almost everybody here is a volunteer, not counting our housing corporation or anything like that. But for the people who you see working at Church of the Messiah, whether that's summer camp or after school, the marching band, the doctor's office, all of those things, those are people who have committed their time because we want to help our community.
Well, for nothing else, I'm glad you're not telling me, give me your money, give me the money that you want to go to God, and I'll ask God to bless you with the money that you've given to me. So thank you for not pretending to be a fiduciary for God.
Yes.
And I'm glad to have a conversation with a person that doesn't remind me of a rapper. I just feel like, you're sitting here. I mean, just somebody that I'd see walking up and down the street. I've had the opportunity to talk to you prior to. I have always appreciated and applauded who you are and what you do because I hear it from the people that you touch. If there's one thing that you would say, you certainly know the things that are going on. You've talked about gentrification. A lot of times people in the city of Detroit feel left out of the equation of the new Detroit. We're still wrestling with illiteracy, gun violence, unemployment.
Yes.
If there's one thing that you would say to people who are listening to this that you think would actually either not necessarily make them feel better, but see things differently and move in a different direction, helping to change the trajectory for everybody and not just one group of people, what would it be?
It would be hold down. Hold down, don't let go. A lot of people in the city of Detroit are heroes. I remember in the documentary that we're in called The United States of Detroit, I had said, I get in trouble for the stuff that I say. Jesus got in trouble too. With everybody, because it's almost like, well, Pastor Barry, that was kind of controversial. And I'm thinking to myself, how is justice controversial? Mm-hmm. How is doing the right thing controversial? But it is. And I had said, for the people in Detroit, the cowards have left and the tough people stayed. And they making it happen in the city of Detroit. Stay here, keep it going, make it happen. We tougher than it is that we know. And a lot of the cowards, in my opinion, really did left. I understand why people leave the city with all of the issues it is, but there's a lot of people who are here, not because they were left behind, because they love this city, and they choose to be here, and they've stuck it out, and they've been through the bankruptcy, and the hard times, and the turmoil, and the violence, and the white fight, and they still decided to stay here. Those are the people. That's the true Detroit. The true Detroit is the Detroit that looked at the good, the bad, the ugly, the hell, the high water, the bankruptcy, gentrification, poverty, gun violence, and stop and say, I'm still going to be here because I love this city and I'm going to stand up for the people that's here. That is true Detroit. That's the Detroit that's staying. That's the Detroit that's making all of this happen. And if that Detroit wasn't here, no other new Detroit could ever be here. So that's true Detroit.